everyone. Before we begin tonight's program, we ask that everyone turn off their video and mute their microphones to maximize our bandwidth and eliminate extraneous noise. My name is Isla Vasallo, and I'm a member of the Evesham Green team. We are a community group of volunteers giving of our time and talents in Marlton to build a more sustainable community. And I wanted to give a shout out to Joyce Goldsmith for helping me on the Evesham Green team side get this up and running tonight. And also to Becky LeBoy, who is going to be the presenter. So we're excited to host this webinar, Jersey Friendly Yards, Landscaping for a Healthy Community with Native Plants. The presenter, Becky LeBoy, will introduce the Jersey Friendly Yards website along with tools and resources you can use to create a Jersey-friendly garden or landscape using native plants. She will discuss the importance of a healthy foundation of soil, water conservation practices, and suggest native plant species appropriate to specific conditions. She will also share ways to support pollinators and other wildlife in your yard or community space. Becky is the full-time education outreach specialist for Ocean County Soil Conservation District. She holds an MA in education, a BS in biology, and a BA in international relations, along with teaching credentials for New Jersey, a Rutgers Organic Land Care Certificate, Rutgers Green Infrastructure Champion Certificate, and a Horticulture Certificate from Brooklyn Botanic Garden. She has over 20 years of experience as both a formal classroom teacher and an informal environmental educator. She co-leads the Jersey Shore chapter of the Native Plant Society of New Jersey with her colleague Karen Walzer from the Barnegat Bay Partnership. She enjoys landscaping, surprise, surprise, her own Jersey-friendly yard in Ocean County to attract birds, pollinators, and other wildlife using native plants.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Isla, for the introduction, and a big thank you to the Evesham Green team for inviting me to share this program with all of you tonight. Jersey Friendly Yards, Landscaping for a Healthy Community with Native Plants. So once again, my name is Becky LeBoy, and I'm the Education Outreach Specialist with Ocean County Soil Conservation District. And if you're unfamiliar with a soil conservation district, I completely understand. Unless you're a builder or an engineer or a farmer, or you're having your own house built, you've most likely never heard of a soil conservation district. And the primary purpose of a soil conservation district is to ensure compliance with numerous regulations regarding the disturbance and protection of soil. So you may know that soil is a non-renewable natural resource and arguably one that we cannot live without. So we learned a lesson in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl when severe dust storms caused major agricultural damage to the American prairie lands, and the storms were actually caused by severe drought and coupled with decades and decades of extensive mismanaged farming practices. So we know now how important it is to protect our soil. And the Ocean County Soil Conservation District also has an education program, and it's designed to heighten awareness about the importance of natural resources and their conservation, and to promote environmental stewardship. And I am very fortunate to have this very rewarding role as the Education Outreach Specialist for Ocean County Soil Conservation District. And on behalf of the district, I offer a variety of educational programs that bring awareness to the importance of natural resources, including soil and water, and plants and wildlife. And I encourage stewardship of our natural resources. So your role Everyone who's attending this program tonight, your role as a backyard gardener is really, really important. And it's an important way for you to be an environmental steward as well. So one of the many educational initiatives in which I participate is the Jersey Friendly Yards program. And the Jersey Friendly Yards program is a statewide initiative that offers homeowners as well as schools and businesses and municipalities and communities ways to create healthy yards and healthy landscapes for a healthy environment. And this initiative is a collaborative effort by 3 organizations, which include Ocean County Soil Conservation District, the Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Ocean County, and it is spearheaded by the Barnegat Bay Partnership. And Barnegat Bay Partnership, or BBP, is what's called a National Estuary Program, or NEP. And it's one of only 28 national estuary programs in the entire country, which focuses efforts on water conservation and preservation along our shores and in our estuaries and at our headwaters. So what does water conservation and preservation have to do with gardening? You may be wondering. I'm going to start with a brief science lesson this evening. You may be familiar with the term eutrophication. So eutrophication is the overgrowth of algae in our local water bodies. It's making a lot of news these days. And it's caused by the overload of nutrients in our stormwater runoff. So one source of these nutrients is fertilizer from lawns. And when we spread fertilizer on our lawns, some of it runs off the lawn during rainstorms and it washes down the street, down a storm drain. And our storm drains in New Jersey are directly connected to the nearest water body. And those nearest water bodies inevitably run to the next largest body of water, such as a lake or a bay. And the algae causes numerous problems. It prevents light from reaching the bottom of the lake or bay, harming and killing plant and animal life. When the algae dies and decomposes, it uses up the oxygen in the decomposition process, causing fish kills. And in so doing, it also releases carbon dioxide into the water, which lowers the pH of the water, causing what's called ocean acidification. And acidification actually slows the growth of the shell of shellfish. It can actually impede the growth of their shell, preventing the formation of the shell, and which of course that has a huge domino effect on the overall food chain in our ecosystem in both freshwater and saltwater habitats. So much of those nutrients are coming from us, from homeowners and from businesses and municipalities. It's called non-point source pollution. We can't actually point to a pipe or some discharge area, but we know that it's coming from all of us collectively. We apply fertilizers to lawns and gardens, and the lawns and gardens may not even need those fertilizers. But we can help prevent this by changing our gardening and landscaping practices. So I'm here to spread the word. So throughout this evening's program, I'm going to share ways for you to incorporate best landscaping practices to enhance your yard or garden or landscape using the tools and resources I'll introduce to you on the Jersey Friendly Yards website. And the Jersey Friendly Yards website not only offers information to support the reduction of fertilizer use, we also offer information about eliminating pesticide use and creating a healthy foundation of soil, water conservation practices, creating habitat for wildlife, which is the reason why I garden, and planting for pollinators, another reason why I garden, all with an emphasis on using native plants in the landscape. So I'm going to start by introducing you to the Jersey Friendly Yards website, and I'll share with you some of the tools and resources found on the website. And then I'll come back to the PowerPoint and introduce you to one of our Jersey Friendly gardeners who actually implemented these practices, and I'm going to showcase her inspiring Jersey Friendly yard. So I'm going to take a leap of faith and stop sharing my PowerPoint, and I'm going to share the website. So you have to, Isla, give me a little bit of assistance to let me know when that website is visible.
Absolutely.
Okay, it should be
Yep.
up. Okay,
Yep.
excellent. So this is the Jersey Friendly Yards website. jerseyyards.org with 2 Y's, so JERSEYYARDS, jerseyyards.org. And there's a lot of fun things that you can spend some time exploring on this website. I'm going to show you a couple of things. I'll take a deep dive into 3 of my favorite tools, but I'm going to leave most of the exploration to you on your own. But right over here in this first tab, Threats to Bays and Rivers, you can find information that talks a little bit more about fertilizers in our waterways and eutrophication. Some of the ways we're trying to combat that through legislation, such as the New Jersey's fertilizer law. And because the Jersey Friendly Yards Initiative began through the Barnegat Bay Partnership, which is focused on the Barnegat Bay watershed here in Ocean County, there's a bit of a focus on the Barnegat Bay, but we are, after about 5 years or so, 6, 7 years now, we are really trying to get the word out to the rest of the state, and we'd love to eventually enhance the website to include more information about declines or cleaning up of other lakes in New Jersey, bodies of water, things that are going on all over the state. The rest of the tools are completely applicable to absolutely everyone in the state of New Jersey and beyond. Create a Jersey-friendly yard, lots of tools here. I'm going to take a deep dive in just a minute to show you the interactive yard and 8 steps to a Jersey-friendly yard. But on your own, when you have the time, I invite you to visit Success Stories, which showcases many of the Jersey-friendly gardens we installed in Ocean County and beyond, a little bit in Monmouth County as well. Rain gardens, information about landscaping for pollinators, landscaping in the pinelands in Burlington County. You have a lot of pinelands out there, so there's specific information for you about that. My favorite tool, which I'll show you tonight, is the Jersey Friendly Plant Database. There's also information about native plants of New Jersey, invasive plants, which I'll talk a little bit about my slideshow. Where to buy native plants is a big question I get a lot from people. Where can I buy native plants? I want to start planting natives in my yard and garden. Where can I get them? And we'll take a quick look at that. And we've actually listed nurseries in alphabetical order by county, starting with Atlantic County, and sharing different places where we're aware that there's native plants being sold. It doesn't have to be a complete native plant nursery, but it has to be, substantial. And we do take recommendations. So if there's something on this list, a place you shop for native plants and you don't see it advertised here, let us know and we'd be happy to add it. At the bottom, there's also online retail nurseries and wholesale nurseries that sometimes sell to groups such as native plant societies or perhaps the Evesham Green Group, Green Team, and some Pennsylvania nurseries for those of you who live in West Jersey over the Delaware River. So lots of great information on this page. Okay, so, and let's see what else here. Native plants in public gardens. We feature some of those if you want to go out with your family and enjoy public gardens. More resources for homeowners. This is somewhat of a bibliography of resources. This is an excellent page. All of these are links where you can connect to other organizations or agencies, places where you can find information about composting, environmentally friendly landscaping, gardening for wildlife, lawn care, native plants, lots of different topics here, lots of different websites that you can click on and link to. There's also information just like that for professionals such as landscapers, folks who apply chemicals, which hopefully you don't do, but you can find out information about them, information about Master Gardener program. And then I want to bring your attention to this workshops events tab. This is our 2021 series of webinars. We're hosting our summer series right now. We just had the amazing program by Bruce Crawford of Rutgers, share designing gardens to support the native web of life. Coming up on August 10th, designing and planting with native plants, creating a native habitat by Elaine Silverstein. She is a horticulturist and co-leader of, I think it's the Bergen County chapter of the Native Plant Society. And then I'll be sharing information about soil, water, and light, tips for a successful garden design in September. These are all free programs. You click on the link to register and join us on a Tuesday night. So what I want to show you on the website is an interactive yard. And this is a tool to assist you with kind of getting inspiration and helping with the design of your yard. So it starts out with kind of a basic yard, lots of lawn, home, driveway, a couple of plantings near the house, and some trees and shrubs. So you can go through this entire list. You can get some information and click on these different links. I'm going to jump right into this add beds around the house because that's the fun part. So I want to add some beds to the southeast corner here, maybe some blue star, see what I can do there, add some plants to the front, English ivy. Oh no, it's kind of a little fun tool to help folks understand that there are some very common plants that are not good. They're invasive species, so we've added those little zingers in there. So you can add plants in garden beds, add a garden bed to attract pollinators. You can add a pollinator garden. You can start a vegetable garden. There's harvest rainwater, so you can add rain barrels. You can add a compost bin. And then you can actually view your completed yard. So once you go through this little checklist here, you can add all these different things and you can kind of see the backyard after you've planted all of these wonderful plants and the front yard after you've planted all these wonderful plants. So a little bit of inspiration in the interactive yard. And I want to show you the 8 steps to a Jersey friendly yard. And this is what we really try to focus on in a lot of our programs. Plan before you plant is, again, designing your garden, taking inventory of your yard before you actually dig a hole. And your first hole you dig should be a soil sample. So start with healthy soil. There's lots of information on this page. Where to get your soil test, how to take a soil sample. There's a little video on, gosh, how do I take a soil sample to then mail off to Rutgers Soil Testing Laboratory? And there's all the forms and information on this page that you could utilize to assist with your soil test. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the PowerPoint. And then these other steps include water wisely, fertilize less, minimize risks when managing pests. So a little bit about integrated pest management, IPM, reduction of your lawn and replacement with garden. My favorite one is creating wildlife habitat. And then step 8 is reduce, reuse, recycle. And that talks a lot about compost. So lots of links. We like to think of ourselves as a one-stop shop for gardeners. And then I want to show you the Jersey Friendly Plant Database, which I think you're going to find yourself exploring after the program tonight. So here's our database. It's right now sorted by the newest plants. I know because I add plants, I would say a couple a month, and these are all the newest ones I just added to the database, the top 6 or 7. But I'm going to sort that by A through Z. So we have about 400 plants in our entire database. And then, as I said, I continue to add more and more when I can. And what we want you to be able to do is to actually search for plants that are appropriate for your particular site, your garden or your yard or the area you're landscaping. So with all these different filters here on the left-hand side, you can click on them and it will slowly narrow the choices on the right-hand side of all these different plants. So you can select the region that you live in of New Jersey, coastal plain, Piedmont, Highland, or Ridge and Valley. We're in the coastal plain, so you can see our choices have already changed a little bit. And earlier I mentioned pine lands. If you want to select plants that are specific to the Pine Barrens ecosystem, you can check this, or if perhaps you live on the coast, you can check Barrier Island Coastal. Plant type is important. Maybe you're shopping for your, your flowers. We all love perennials or annuals to add to our gardens in the spring and fall. Perhaps though you want ground covers or shrubs or vines or trees or ferns or grasses. So you have all those different choices. And this is an important feature right here. This is native plants only. So we're going to click that because we want to talk about native plants tonight. Perhaps you're looking for a particular bloom color. Perhaps you're looking for a plant that blooms in the spring. Perhaps you have a lot of deer and you're looking for plants that are deer resistant. Or maybe you want to attract hummingbirds to your yard. Light requirements are important: full sun, partial shade, or shade. Have a pretty sunny yard. And soil type is important. And we have pretty sandy soil here in South Jersey. And then hopefully you've got your pH test completed, and we probably have what's called slightly acidic soil here in South Jersey, or perhaps you have even more acidic soil if you're in the Pinelands. And then soil moisture, do you have well-drained, medium-drained, or wet soil? Our soil here is pretty well-drained. My yard is pretty dry, sandy. And then water conservation practices are important. So high or medium is usually a good choice. And if you're along the coast, you may want to think about salt tolerance of plants. So we have a pretty good list here. We have 6 pages worth of perennials that meet all those requirements I just checked off. And this is a fairly new one I added, Asclepias verticillata world milkweed. I'm going to talk about it in my slideshow, so I'll click on this one. And this is a description page. So you get 2 pictures of what this plant looks like. You can click on these and it shows you where we got the pictures from Lady Bird Johnson. If we click on that, it'll take us to the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center website. And then there's a nice description of the plant, providing you with additional information that you may want to know, where you might want to plant the plant in your yard, such as a border, or if it's a meadow type of plant. We are adding wildlife value specifically. And then all these details that I just went over, whether or not you checked them in the list, they're going to show up here and you'll learn what they are for this particular plant, including some that you don't check off, such as height and spread and growth rate. So it includes the water needs of the plant, the light needs of the plant, the soil characteristics, all this great information. And if you actually register, which just means that you give us your name and your email address, and I think perhaps maybe the county or town where you live, minimal information. Once you register and you sign in, you can actually click on the wheelbarrow over the plant if it's one that you want to add to your list, and the wheelbarrow will turn orange, and then you'll be able to build a list of plants. Perhaps you're focusing on your shade garden or your sun garden, and you can build a list, and then you can actually print that list out and take it with you to the nursery and say, I want these. So the nursery will know exactly what plants you want. So this is one of my favorite features of the entire website, is the Jersey Friendly Yards plant database. So have lots of fun with that. And I'm going to share with you now. So let's see, I'm going to stop sharing the website. Oh, well, one more thing while I'm looking up here, you can actually email, if you click this, you'll actually email directly my colleague, Karen Walzer, and you can ask her a question. Anything you want to know about Jersey Friendly Yards, or if you have a specific plant question, you can click Ask an Expert, and this actually goes to the Master Gardener of Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and they'll get your email. Karen also gets it, and they'll be able to help you out with a plant question you might have. All right, so I'm going to now showcase. Okay, and hopefully, Isla, how's that look? Are you seeing that PowerPoint?
Yep, seeing it looks like your first page of your PowerPoint.
It sure does. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So this is Phyllis. So Phyllis is a Jersey Friendly Gardener. She's officially a Jersey Friendly Gardener. So she participated in a pilot program that we had in 2018, where we had 10 homeowners. They actually applied for the program, and they were offered several training sessions over weekends. And that the sessions included information about the Jersey Friendly Yards Initiative, tutorial focusing on the Jersey Friendly Yards website, a little bit like I just showed you, but of course we spent a lot more time. It's a little bit more in depth. Each participant received a site visit, so I had the great opportunity to go to everybody's home and take a look at their site, and we discussed different options for their yards, or for perhaps a small garden, or whatever they wanted to do with their yard. They were provided with a soil test through Rutgers Soil Testing Laboratory, and they each all got $150 worth of native plants that they selected to get started on their Jersey Friendly garden. So Phyllis, she wanted to turn her lawn into an oasis for pollinators. And less lawn means, of course, less mowing, less fertilizer, less water consumption, and spending more time enjoying a beautiful garden. So she used the interactive yard tool to get some inspiration for how to plan out her garden. And the front of Phyllis's yard, it gets full sun all day long. Her garden plan included additional information. She wanted more foundation plantings next to her house, consisting of flowering perennials. And she wanted plantings along the street, also including more perennials and some shrubs. And she wanted to leave a narrow walkway that kind of winds around to the side of her house, where there's a little stream bed below. She has a tributary of the Toms River flowing right by her house, which is lovely. And there's a nice shady wooded backyard. So after sketching out her plan, she took a sample of her soil and she sent it to Rutgers Soil Testing Lab. And it was determined that she had a soil texture somewhere between sandy loam and loamy sand, meaning she had a very high content of sand, not surprising, with a bit of clay and silt particles sprinkled in, but not unlike many of us here in South Jersey. So her soil is considered well drained. And the results of her pH test, 6.87, which is considered what's called very slightly acidic, close to neutral, but very slightly acidic. So it's really at the upper range of the optimum pH for many garden plants, which is indicated by the green bar. So Phyllis was focusing on native plants, and many, as we know, many native plants prefer soil that's even more acidic than Phyllis's soil. But understandably, she didn't want to add sulfur, which would lower the pH, making her soil more acidic. So Phyllis opted for adding organic matter. And organic matter actually buffers soil pH that's either too acidic or too alkaline. So she was content with the pH of her soil for her purposes. So the macronutrient levels of potassium, phosphorus, and calcium in Phyllis's soil were below optimum. but not excruciatingly low. And because she was focusing on native plants that thrive in dry, somewhat nutrient poor soils, she opted to rely on organic matter inputs through the addition of compost rather than adding chemical fertilizers. Good for Phyllis. So the level of magnesium was at an optimum level. Her micronutrient levels were all adequate, and it was no surprise that she had high iron content in her soil, as most of us do here in South Jersey. So if you want to get your soil tested, just like Phyllis did, to find out your soil's texture, pH, nutrient levels, or any other additional soil characteristics, visit steps 1 and 2 on the 8 Steps to a Jersey Friendly Yard pages on the Jersey Friendly Yards website. So once Phyllis had this important information about her soil and moisture and light conditions in her yard, she was ready to use the Jersey Friendly Plant Database to determine the right plants for her space. And she lives on a corner lot, so here's her front lawn from another direction. And the stream bed runs underneath a road, and her yard kind of continues to the left around the side of her house into that shady wooded backyard. So from 2018 to 2019, Phyllis replaced her lawn, or actually I should say killed her lawn, and she replaced it with a new garden bed. So she used a technique called sheet mulching, also called lasagna mulching, where you actually use layers of cardboard or newspaper or other organic decomposable material to cover the grass, and then add a thick layer of mulch on top. So all of this organic matter will effectively smother and kill the lawn, while at the same time it actually adds organic matter, basically essentially compost, to the soil, and helps to build a nice soil foundation for the garden. And I don't have a photo to show how this was done in Phyllis's yard, but I can show the process. We applied the same lasagna gardening process to another Jersey Friendly garden. And this is a small butterfly garden at Jake's Branch County Park in Beechwood near Toms River, New Jersey. And it's situated right in the middle of the lawn along a pathway. So we removed the lawn through the process of sheet mulching. So here's Lisa. Lisa's another Jersey Friendly gardener. And Ray, who is a New Jersey watershed ambassador. So they're first laying down hay, which is part of our lasagna. So the hay smothered the grass, and at the same time, it adds organic matter. We didn't mow here, but I highly recommend for your yard to mow as low as you can, mow that grass as low as you can, and then start your lasagna gardening. So on top of the hay, we placed large sheets of cardboard, and on top of the cardboard, we added a layer of compost, which we got free from the county. And so there is the nice foundation. So we did this in December of 2018. And after this, another thick layer of mulch was laid down on top of this layering as well. So in June the following year of 2019, some Boy Scouts came and planted the native perennials for our butterfly garden. And I went there this year in June. And here's some beautiful lush green plants with lots of buds ready to bloom. So very, very exciting. All right, so back to Phyllis's yard. So here is her front yard from a different angle. And this is 1 year into her Jersey Friendly Yard makeover. So this is July of 2019. And there's Phyllis. She's waving by the mailbox. She's proudly showcasing her garden. And this is July of 2020. So this is last summer. And then here is a photo from June of 2021 this year. And June of 2021 from a different angle, so from across the street. And her completely different, right? So what an amazing makeover for her yard. So we're going to take a little virtual tour of Phyllis's garden, and I'm going to introduce to you some of the many native plant species that she's selected for her Jersey Friendly garden design. So we're going to start right below the mailbox, so you can see New Jersey's only native cactus. Always exciting to hear that New Jersey actually has a cactus. It's prickly pear cactus, one of my favorite native plants, Opuntia humifusa. I'm sure you've seen them growing out there in Burlington County. It has flat, fleshy, oval, evergreen pads. They stand upright. Some lie horizontally. Um, they do become somewhat desiccated and shriveled during the winter time, but they amazingly plump up again in the spring. And they have these beautiful, beautiful yellow flowers. I actually have a large patch of prickly pear cactus growing under my mailbox as well. So these ornate flowers, they develop on top of each of the pads, and they actually bloom June, July. So they're done blooming by now. And each flower is diurnal, and so they bloom for only one day. And when every pad has one, you can see lots of buds here. It's just a beautiful array of blooming flowers in the summertime, and they're magnets for bees. And it's fun to watch the bees because they actually literally dive into the center of the flowers, and it looks like they swim around in there looking for nectar and pollen. So it's really fun to watch them. And then they fly off covered with pollen grains. And when the flowers are fertilized, red edible fruit follows fertilization. And the flowers, fruits, and the pads are all food for wildlife. The pads and fruit are also edible for humans. However, teeny, teeny, tiny, almost invisible reddish spikes persist and necessitate much, much care when you're handling all parts of this plant. But you can use prickly pear in the coast, seaside gardens, rock gardens, sunny borders, dry sandy areas of your yard, or as a ground cover. It does spread slowly over time, and it creates a nice dense patch. It's drought tolerant, so it offers an opportunity for gardeners to practice water conservation. It needs zero fertilizer, and really it requires close to zero care. Zero maintenance. And it's also a really good soil stabilizer, especially for sandy soil, good for erosion control, which can be very, very helpful for our very sandy yards. So Phyllis planted a variety of perennials that are attractive to pollinators, and she included in her dry yard swamp milkweed. And she's had great success with swamp milkweed. It typically prefers moist soil. The literature all says it prefers moist soil, but it is very tolerant of dry soil. It has a nice deep tap root. But because it has that deep tap root, it makes it difficult to transplant once it's established. So do make sure that you plant it exactly where you want it to live in your garden. I also have swamp milkweed that has volunteered in my very, very dry yard in an area that I do not water and I don't pay much attention to at all, and it's still doing very well. It's wildlife friendly. It's a host plant for monarch and queen butterfly caterpillars. The stems and leaves have that milky sap I'm sure you're familiar with from milkweeds, which contains the cardiac glycosides that, of course, when ingested by the caterpillar that's feeding on the leaves, those cardiac glycosides make them very toxic to birds and other predators, and the adults as well. And then those beautiful clusters of pink flowers, they bloom July through August. And then it's followed by a really pretty elongated seed pod. So you can use that seed pod on stem in dried flower arrangements. The nectar of the flower is also a really important food source for bees and butterflies and hummingbirds. So this is a very versatile plant. And Phyllis has created these really cool labels for her plants. They indicate different qualities and characteristics of the different plants as noted in the Jersey Friendly Yards database. So for example, swamp milkweed is native to New Jersey. It is tolerant to browsers, tolerant to deer, beneficial to insects, bees, butterflies, and it is a host plant for the monarch caterpillar. So another milkweed type, which is not as common, is called world milkweed that Phyllis has planted in her garden, Asclepias verticillata. Also a host plant for monarch and queen butterfly larvae. It has really skinny leaves, and they're whorled around the stem, and it grows to only about 2 feet tall or so. And there's clusters of white to greenish flowers near the top of each plant. And this is a picture of the one in my yard. It can bloom anytime between July and September, which is a little bit later in the year than other milkweeds. And the nectar is very attractive to lots of different insects, including long-tongued bees, short-tongued bees, wasps, flies, butterflies, skippers, and beetles. And like swamp milkweed, it's deer and rabbit resistant, requires no chemical fertilizer inputs. Milkweeds a lot of times are considered weedy in the sense that they need little help from humans to thrive in their natural environment. And in my opinion, that's exactly the kind of plant that I want in my yard. So
excuse me. Oh, Becky?
Yeah.
My neighbor is cutting his grass. Is that bother? Can people hear that? Should I mute myself? I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. If you would like to mute yourself, that's fine. But if you need to contact me, of course, unmute yourself at any time.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So in the center of this picture is purple-tipped flowers, and that is called blue giant hyssop, also called anise hyssop because the leaves smell a little bit like anise. And this is a really commonly planted perennial in many New Jersey gardens. If I could see you all, I'd say, who has this in your yard? I'm sure a couple of us here tonight do. I do. It thrives in full sun, dry, sandy soil, and has really high drought tolerance. So just my type of plant because I don't have a sprinkler system. Phyllis doesn't have a sprinkler system. When I water my plants, it's really just to kind of go check them out, see how they're doing, take a look at all the different pollinators that are in my garden. This one is currently in bloom, and it's just absolutely buzzing with bees and butterflies of all shapes and sizes. And I've seen hummingbirds come and dip into the plant as well. And here is a silver spotted skipper, which is nectaring on blue giant hyssop. So because it's so commonly planted and such a staple in so many gardens that you might think that this is native to New Jersey, but it's actually not native to New Jersey. It's native to the northern Midwest of the United States. So if you are a native to New Jersey plant purist, then this plant is probably not for you. But if you are planting for the purpose of providing ecological value to your yard, offering food for pollinators, birds, and wildlife, and you're willing to make an exception for a non-native to New Jersey but non-invasive plant, not an invasive plant, then this would be an excellent choice. But if you would like to stick with New Jersey natives, there are two cousins, Agastache, I'm gonna butcher this word, Scrophularifolia, which is called purple giant hyssop, and then there's Agastache nepetoides, commonly called yellow giant hyssop. So these are the two native cousins. They are considered rare in the wild in our state of New Jersey. Both reach heights up to and above 6 feet. They have really tall, thick, square central stems, and their flowers are similar to blue giant hyssop, but they're not as full or showy. These purple flowers here of the purple giant hyssop are really bright, but truly they're traditionally not that bright. They're more of a very buff purple color. They do have a nice long bloom time. The flowers really open slowly over a period of about 6 weeks on the plant. The purple giant hyssop is sensitive to competition in the wild, so it relies on soil disturbance to germinate and propagate. It will propagate by seed, so you might plant it. It might not come up in the same place, but it might come up somewhere else in your yard. And the leaves of yellow giant hyssop don't have that strong scent like other mints in the mint family, but they are bitter tasting to deer, and all three of the plants, blue giant hyssop, purple giant hyssop, and yellow giant hyssop, are fairly highly deer resistant. So I think it's probably a good time to discuss, well, what is a native? So a native plant is considered to have occurred here prior to European colonization. And because of the long evolutionary relationship a native plant has formed with its environment, it is adapted to local conditions, including local soil and climate, which is really important. It has natural defenses to local diseases and pests, also really important. And over evolutionary time, it has formed complex relationships with other plants and animals, probably the most important thing in my eyes, because I really value the relationship my garden has with wildlife. And as an important part of the ecosystem, native plants support pollinators, and they support wildlife, and they support overall biodiversity. So then what is a non-native plant? So non-native plants have been introduced to a certain region by humans, and they're from other regions. Some are what we might call friendly, and they play nice in the environment with other plants and animals, such as purple coneflower, Echinacea purpurea, which is actually native to the prairies of the Midwest of the US, but it's not a New Jersey native. And a lot of people are surprised by that because it is such a staple in the home garden. Another staple in the home garden, gladiolas, they are not even native to the United States. They come from Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean, but they are also considered friendly. They play nice in the garden. They don't spread. However, there are some plants that are not native and not friendly, and we consider them invasive species. So important concept to know, what is an invasive species? Callery pear, butterfly bush, burning bush, Japanese barberry, purple loosestrife, and so many more that are commonly planted in landscapes are all invasive species. So an invasive species is a non-native plant whose introduction causes or is likely to cause harm to the environment or to the economy. Invasive species outcompete other plants for resources. They take over land, choke out and strangle trees and shrubs, and because they did not evolve in the new landscape, many of them provide very little, if any, ecological value. Some that do provide ecological value, such as food resources, maybe in the form of berries that birds eat. These seeds are then spread far and wide, and the growth of these invasives, such as Japanese barberry, becomes overwhelming to the natural landscape, and it literally changes our native forests, our meadows, our wetlands, and other natural ecosystems of our beautiful state of New Jersey. Our northern New Jersey forests are actually inundated with burning bush and Japanese barberry. It's really sad to take a hike in a forest in northern New Jersey and all you see is Japanese barberry everywhere. And Callery pear trees have just overwhelmed South Jersey. Riding through South Jersey in the springtime, it breaks my heart to see all the white flowering trees in the woodlands because they're Callery pear. So the Jersey Friendly Yards website, our database, as I mentioned earlier, has about 400 plants in our database, and a little over 300 of them are native to New Jersey. A small handful of the rest, we have some invasive species that are commonly planted in the landscape, and as I showed you earlier, we flag those to encourage people not to plant them. They may not realize they're actually invasive. But we do include in our database many commonly planted non-native but non-invasive species, as I mentioned, purple coneflower, the blue giant hyssop, the threadleaf coreopsis, woodland poppy, yucca. There's actually many plants that are common in our gardens that are friendly, that are not native to New Jersey. They do provide ecological value, such as food, nesting material, and nesting structures, food for pollinators, birds, and wildlife. They don't require copious amounts of water or fertilizers. They kind of pretend they're native, I guess you could say, and some do provide erosion control and stabilization resources. So we have included those in our Jersey Friendly Plant database, but as I pointed out earlier, you can actually select natives only when you're searching for your plants if you would like to only plant natives to New Jersey. So I do want to offer you a bit more information to guide your choices. There's two maps here of New Jersey. You can see, we all know, of course, New Jersey's east coast is the Atlantic Ocean, the Delaware Bay in the south, the west is the Delaware River, and to the north there is a straight line delineating the border between New Jersey and New York, drawn on the map by humans. This area, to us, we know this area as New Jersey. That shape is New Jersey. But plants do not pay attention to human-made boundaries. They do not know New Jersey from New York. They do, however, respond to geology, climate, soil, moisture, sunlight, and the environment as a whole. The map to the right is a geologic map of New Jersey showing the many geologic features. South Jersey is called the coastal plain and consists of relatively new sandy soil, relatively new. And North Jersey consists of old rock formations. That's where our mountains are in New Jersey. So, in relation to that, this beautiful ground cover that Phyllis is growing in her yard called St. Andrew's Cross, which tolerates dry soil and full to part sun. Its natural range is mostly southeast United States, and it reaches all the way north to the middle of New Jersey. You can kind of see where it cuts off right in the middle there, just up the coastal plain, and that's it. So if you live in northern New Jersey, would you include this in your garden? Because it is technically a native to New Jersey. And a cousin of St. Andrew's Cross, shrubby St. John's wort, and here it's growing in my yard. Phyllis also is growing one in her yard. It's just gorgeous. It is native to New Jersey, but barely. So the lime green shows nativity. So actually the dark green shows political boundaries of a state where this particular plant is found. The lime green shows the county where there are wild populations of a particular plant. The yellow shows natural wild populations, but rare. So the yellow shows that shrubby St. John's wort is native to New Jersey. You can see the yellow, but that it's rare in New Jersey. But it's not all over the state of New Jersey. It's just in little pockets here and there right along the Delaware River. So living in the coastal plain, should I plant shrubby St. John's wort in New Jersey? Is it technically native to my area? I chose to. So that decision is going to be completely up to you. So New Jersey Friendly Yards, we have taken the approach that there are some non-native but not invasive plants that do provide ecological value to wildlife, to the environment, and to humans that we have included in our database. But really, we want you to decide if you would like to plant just New Jersey natives or include some Jersey-friendly non-natives in your yard. Dr. Doug Tallamy, who is an expert, the guru of native plants, he suggests that at least 70% of your landscape should be native plants. and absolutely no invasive species. Okay, so back to Phyllis's garden. She planted a native showy goldenrod, which is just gorgeous. She added that to the foundational planting next to her house. Showy goldenrod, Solidago speciosa, blooms July through September, and even later into the fall after many other goldenrods are finished blooming. And they grow in dry, sandy clay or loamy soils, and they have high drought tolerance. My kind of plant, Jersey-friendly plant. And Phyllis really makes a conscientious effort to select drought-tolerant plants for water conservation practices in her garden. And she also has stiff goldenrod, Solidago rigida, and she has seaside goldenrod, Solidago sempervirens, both growing in her yard and both New Jersey natives. And the plant on the left is the stiff goldenrod growing in Phyllis's garden. And the plant on the right is stiff goldenrod planted in a different Jersey-friendly demonstration garden in Toms River. And goldenrod flowers generally all attract honeybees and bumblebees and ants and beetles and moths and butterflies, all primarily seeking nectar. And caterpillars of many moths feed on various parts of different goldenrod species, so they're a host plant. And deer and rabbit do occasionally eat the vegetative parts of the plant, but many goldenrods contain mildly poisonous chemicals that do deter some herbivores. And birds do benefit from many goldenrods, and pictured here is a ruby-crowned kinglet perched on a seaside goldenrod, gleaning tiny caterpillars from the foliage. And this is a pine siskin gorging on seaside goldenrod seeds in the fall, along with several dozen members of its flock. So as we continue our tour, Phyllis is pointing out partridge pea that she has planted to create a green mulch. So in a natural ecosystem, bare soil is typically covered with organic matter, such as fallen leaves and twigs and sticks. We as humans tend to add mulch in the form of wood chips, but it kind of gives a bit of an unnatural kind of a human-made look, right? All that mulch. But green mulch, the term green mulch is used to describe covering your soil with living plants to create a green substrate beneath your taller perennials. So basically, it's kind of akin to selective weed gardening, perhaps. So instead of weeds growing in the bare soil, you actually intentionally plant fast-growing and low-growing native plants that will spread beneath your perennials, but not take over. So I also want to point out the use of a relatively large tree branch that Phyllis is using as a garden border. She always finds very, very clever ways of using resources that nature provides. So reduce, reuse, recycle, step 8 in our Jersey Friendly Yards website. So partridge pea, I want to explain a little bit more about this beautiful plant. It's actually a native annual. It has delicately feathered leaves that kind of resemble ferns, and it gets clusters of really pretty bright yellow flowers that bloom from June through September, visited by butterflies, beneficial wasps, and native bees who drink the nectar. And it's also a host plant for various species of sulfur butterfly larvae. Fertilized flowers produce flattened seed pods. It's a legume, so it kind of looks like maybe peas or beans. They contain 2 to 4 seeds, which are prized by birds. It's highly adaptable to various soil conditions, including dry sand, clay, and loam. And it's a prolific seeder. So as an annual plant, it will, the plant itself doesn't regerminate, of course, each season, but the seeds will germinate and grow in number. So because it's a member of the legume family, its roots form important relationships with the fungi in the soil and help fix nitrogen, again, reducing the need for chemical fertilizers in the garden. This plant is called Pussy Toes. makes a great ground cover. It has really cute woolly mat forming leaves, really soft, and the closed flower buds are also woolly and they resemble a cat's paw, like toes on a cat's paw. Whitish pink flowers bloom in the spring. So Phyllis's garden, it kind of circles around the side of her house. Again, the stream bed is below the shady wooded area to the right. And she filled the bed with lots of native plants, including great blue lobelia, shrubby St. John's wort, which I mentioned earlier, 9-bark, all New Jersey natives. And her intention is to cover every inch of the mulch with living plants. So great blue lobelia prefers either part shade or does tolerate full sun, preferably if it's sun during the cooler part of the day, maybe the morning. Its native habitat includes swamps and moist low areas, but it does tolerate some drought. So it's an excellent addition to your borders or to add depth to your garden, rain gardens, wildlife gardens, woodland gardens, or even partly shady areas of your yard. And back to St. John's wort, I wanted to showcase those beautiful, beautiful flowers. It's a small multi-branched shrub. These bright yellow flowers bloom June through August. So in my garden, in Phyllis's garden, they're blooming right now. They actually don't produce nectar, but they're visited by pollen-seeking bumblebees and halictid bees and syrphid flies. It's just a really stunning plant. And another stunning plant is this one called 9-bark, a shrub, another shrub. So it's a wildlife-friendly deciduous shrub. It has really pretty exfoliating bark, and that bark, as it exfoliates, it does provide winter interest because it is deciduous. It does tolerate really poor soil conditions. No need to apply fertilizers, fairly drought tolerant, and the flowers are just really gorgeous. Clusters of pinkish white flowers, and they bloom early May through June. Excellent nectar source for native bees. And then the clusters of red fruit offer food for birds in the summer. So a couple more plants to showcase. I want to emphasize the importance of shrubs and trees as a component to a Jersey-friendly wildlife garden. This one borders Phyllis's stream. It's called a sour gum, also called black gum, also called tupelo, Nyssa sylvatica. It's medium-sized, deciduous, and has numerous benefits for wildlife. Although it does have very inconspicuous flowers that bloom in the spring, it does have really pretty fruit. It's called a drupe, so it has one seed in the middle, kind of like an avocado. That is an excellent food source for birds and wildlife. It's really showy, bright red leaves in the fall, has good wind resistance, tolerance to flooding, tolerance to salty conditions, low maintenance plant, offers shade. Just an excellent choice. Nyssa sylvatica, black gum, sweet gum, sour gum, or tupelo. And then she has another beautiful plant, a tree that I love called red maple, so I wanted to showcase it. And it is also a host plant for Polyphemus moth caterpillars. So she has protected one inside that tent there. And this stunning tree is usually the first one to bloom in the spring. It's hard to miss. All the red flowers emerge in March and April. It's really easy to identify that way. New growth on red maple, including the fruit, twigs, and leaf stalks, are all red. And then spring migrants, such as this golden-crowned kinglet, forages on red maple, looking for little caterpillars and other insects that overwintered on this tree. And the bright red fruit called samaras, they will twirl down to the ground like little helicopters once they mature. And then one Phyllis's Trees is receiving a hug from this vine. So I want to emphasize the importance of vines in a Jersey-friendly garden. And many vines can actually be surprisingly low maintenance. And this one is called Virginia Creeper. It does not mature into a thick woody stem that strangles the tree. It is a vigorous tendril climber, but it's not parasitic and it will not feed or smother the host tree. And on the contrary, it's pretty relatively easy to pull down from a tree that it has climbed or easily cut with garden clippers at the end of the season if that's what you choose to do. It's really one of my favorite plants. Has small greenish white flowers in May through August, and they lead to really one of the most attractive fruiting patterns. Clusters of berries turn from pink to blue to dark purple, and they are showcased by contrasting red stems, and they're valued by birds as food. And then the leaves, of course, turn that beautiful crimson red in the fall. And it's a host plant to Virginia creeper, sphinx moth. So, and then getting to the last group of plants in Phyllis's yard. This is her monarch way station where she grows more milkweed and a couple other plants. And like the swamp milkweed and the world milkweed introduced earlier, the leaves of the common milkweed are a food source for monarch butterfly caterpillars. And the flowers are enticing to the bees. And common boneset is planted among the milkweed. It's a clumping perennial, a native. Small white flowers bloom July through September, and butterflies like this common buckeye really value the nectar as food. It's a host plant for numerous butterfly and moth caterpillars. It will readily self-seed and it does spread a bit, so it might offer you an instant meadow in a few short seasons if you're not careful. It mixes well with grass-leaved goldenrod, ironweed, and wingstem, all native to New Jersey. They're all a little bit weedy, so together they would make an excellent meadow. I consider these to be low maintenance plants because once established, they do not need any watering, fertilizers, or care whatsoever. So really, no matter the size of your yard, you can create a beautiful, low maintenance Jersey friendly garden using native plants and provide food, habitat, resources for wildlife, following Jersey friendly best practices, and create a healthy landscape for a healthy community. So thank you so much for attending tonight's program. There's my contact information, education@soildistrict.org. I am happy to answer any questions either now, or if you'd like to email me questions, I can respond later. And I encourage you to visit the Jersey Friendly Yards website at jerseyyards.org.
That was really wonderful, Becky. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you like people to put their questions in the chat, or can they unmute themselves and ask the question?
I am fine with whatever anyone is comfortable doing. Let's see, we have 17 participants right now. So if anybody wants to unmute and ask me a question, I'll actually stop sharing my screen, so I'll probably have a better opportunity to see you then. Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Becky, you mentioned a plant and I didn't get the name of it. It was the one you mentioned before, St. Andrew's Cross, I believe. It was
Okay.
you raved about in your program. I think it had a blue or a purple flower.
So I'm going to share again. Can you see the,
Yeah.
can you see the screen? Let's see. Is it great blue lobelia?
I don't know. It was near the beginning of your presentation. Yeah, keep going back.
Is it the hyssop?
St. Andrew's Cross, have you gotten there yet?
I think St. Andrew's Cross was a little, because we're kind of starting down the pathway here. Going past the blue giant hyssop, and I discussed the purple and yellow giant hyssop.
Hyssop.
And then here's the St. Andrew's Cross.
Okay, now the one before this one, what's the one before this?
Before St. Andrew's Cross.
Yeah.
I think that's the hyssop. I was introducing the non-native, but they are friendly coneflower, purple coneflower, Echinacea purpurea. And then prior to that was the hyssop. So the yellow giant hyssop, the
That's
purple
the-
giant hyssop.
That's the one, hyssop. Okay.
Hyssop. Yep. So Agastocky, Nepetoides, Agastocky, Scrophulariafolia, and then this one's Agastocky foeniculum.
Thank you.
The blue giant hyssop. Yeah. Now that, just so you know, the blue giant hyssop, the one that's most commonly planted and a little bit more showy, is the non-native to New Jersey. It's native to the kind of northwest. So that's up to you if you want to include it in your garden. And then the two native choices are the yellow giant hyssop and the purple giant hyssop. And all three, if you type in hyssop to the plant database in the search bar, you'll get all three plants, and you can explore more and read more about all three.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat. Are there any plants that do especially well in marl clay type soil? So for those of us in Marlton, we'd like to know that.
Excellent. Good question. So I'm going to see if I can share the Jersey. Do you see the Jersey Friendly Yards database? So hopefully,
I'm sorry. Yeah, yep, we can
Okay.
see it.
Excellent. Good. So I'm going to get rid of all of my initial filters. And we can kind of use this as a little teaching moment. So you want to know specifically, shall we check off native plants? Because we're talking about native plants, right? And then you were asking about soil type. So you want to grow in clay, is that correct? And then do you want me to narrow it to flowering perennials? I think we typically want to plant flowering perennials. So here's our choices for these characteristics in our yard. We have 5 pages. So if any of these look good, here's the world milkweed. Grows in sand, but certainly tolerates clay. We can actually click on that and check it out. So soil characteristics: loam, organic, sandy, and clay. Full sun, partial shade, high drought tolerance. Attracts all these different pollinators and wildlife. My kind of plant, world milkweed. So that might be a good choice for clay soil.
I actually like, yeah, I was gonna just say that. I have the blue false indigo in my yard, and it's a great flowering perennial for the spring. And then it gets these pretty cool looking seed pods that turn black.
Yeah.
It definitely reseeds in my yard, but it's a great looking plant.
Yeah. I do have some bad news for you.
Oh no.
This is mislabeled. We labeled
Okay.
this as a New Jersey native, and I've been told before, and I looked it up myself, and it is true. It's not technically a New Jersey native. It's, I think, native to the prairies. But so I'll have to change that. But its cousin, which probably maybe doesn't like clay soil, because I don't see it listed here, is called Baptisia tinctoria, which is in the database. And it has a little bit different growth structure. It's just as gorgeous, but its leaves are really tiny, and it's more rounded, and it has tiny yellow flowers, and it's just finished blooming, and that's the native Baptisia. But I grow this in my yard. This one is acceptable to me. And I really try hard to plant natives, but there are some non-natives that are friendly, not invasive, and the important thing is they provide ecological value to wildlife. So, to our landscape.
Sounds good. I'll keep mine then.
So really
Can I ask
that,
a question?
these are some great choices here.
Yeah, I think we have another question. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's me, Jennifer. I thank you so much. This is awesome. I am just getting into this, and I had a landscaper recommend all these plants, and then I don't know, somehow was introduced to this whole native plant thing, and like nothing on his list was native, and I'm just surprised at how difficult it is to how prevalent the other stuff is. But I was wondering, are hydrangeas pollinator friendly? I seem to read different that they're sterile, or maybe there's different varieties, but
Yes. Yep.
what?
Well, we have a native hydrangea, which is absolutely gorgeous. I wish I included it in this slideshow just to show you how gorgeous it is. I don't believe Phyllis has planted it in her yard, so it's kind of focusing on her yard, but I actually planted one where I work at our office called oak leaf hydrangea. And it's called that because its leaves are somewhat shaped a little bit like oak leaves. And it's blooming right now. It's got these gorgeous, gorgeous flowers. It doesn't, to my knowledge, turn those kind of like pinkish blue colors. It's not sensitive to, I guess it's the acidity in the soil that makes the hydrangeas turn those different colors, is what I'm told. I have never researched that to prove it, but if you would like to go native with a hydrangea, you can choose this beautiful oak leaf hydrangea. Other hydrangeas, they're not invasive species to my knowledge. So, I see them planted. We have Jersey friendly gardeners who have hydrangeas planted in their yard, and they're keeping them. And I am not gently nudging them to pull them out. Like I gently nudge some of our gardeners to pull out their Japanese barberries, and eventually they realize that it's not a good idea to have an invasive species in your yard, and there's plenty of other substitutes.
Right.
But I support your decision for hydrangea, and if you want to investigate the native oak leaf, this is a really nice one. Look at the fall color, really, really pretty.
Oh, I think I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I was muted. Any other questions? There was a lot of good information given, but as Becky said, Jersey Friendly Yards website seems to be kind of a one-stop shopping experience, learning experience, and even to get started.
Yes. And it can be overwhelming. So I really encourage folks to just start small. You don't have to do what Phyllis did and take out your entire lawn and try to, put a garden in 1 year. You'll get frustrated, and that's not good. So just, start either maybe substituting plants you have that are invasive with native plants, or just create a very small bed near your mailbox and start there, or around a tree, or a nook in your yard, and just add to it each year, as fall and winter approach, not too quickly, but they're not too far away. You can start thinking about where you might want to put down some cardboard and newspaper and mulch and, create your bed naturally for next spring, and then get your list going from the database. And we're here as a resource. I'll just again mention, if you click this envelope, you'll send Karen Walzer, my colleague, a direct email. And then my information, I'm at education@soildistrict.org. And if you have plant questions, you can always ask an expert, which will go to a master gardener. And Karen gets those emails as well. And so let's see. I have, I believe, one last slide. There it is. So information for Evesham Green Team.
Yes, thank you again for partnering with us on this, Becky. It was great, very easy. I wanted to give a shout out to Joyce Goldsmith again. She helped me, get people to sign up, so that was great. Like I said, we're the Evesham Green Team in Marlton, New Jersey. You can connect with us via Gmail, Evesham Green Team at Gmail. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And we do have a website via a Google platform. We're going to start our monthly meetings back up in September, the second Thursday of the month. Not quite sure if we're going to be doing it virtually or in person. And some of the things we do is we, in 2021, thanks to Janet Rolnick, one of our Green Team members, we did a native plant garden tour, which was very successful. We hope to do it again in 2022. We're also starting up an initiative to do conversations on climate change. And we really stress that folks that come out to our meetings and get involved, we look to them for what their passions are. And that's the direction we can go in. And again, it's towards building a more sustainable community. So thank you again. And I think that's it.
Great. Well, thank you. Hats off to the Evesham Green Team. Thank you for being leaders in sustainability.
Okay, great.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thanks.
Have a great
Thanks
night.
for coming.
So
Good night.
yes, thank you everyone for coming.
Bye.
Night.
Night.
It was good, Isla. I always learn more all the time.
I know
That's a great website.
it is.
Okay. Was that only 16 people showed up or whatever?
Yeah. Are we still recording, Becky?
Oh, yes, thank you. I'll turn that off. Appreciate that.